Hey Mark, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Justin? It's going
Uh,
pretty good. Yourself?
Terrible. I do not. I have zero progress and I have nothing to report.
Okay. Well, maybe an interesting story at least. But let's see. I guess I'll tick through mine then.
Yeah, please.
Health-wise, I made it out running twice. Remember last week I didn't at all because I pulled my Achilles a little bit and was a
Yeah.
little afraid of that. But lots of stretching this week. Went twice. All is good. Also did two body weight weight training exercise sessions in the park.
Oh, nice.
And
Wait. Weight training session in the park. How does that work?
so basically, I don't go to a gym or anything. All I do is I go to a park near where I live, and they have like various exercise stations. It's mostly older people, but anyone
Oh,
can use them. And
cool.
I do dips and pull-ups and some modified pull-ups where basically the dip bar is here and you're supposed to be doing this, but
Yeah.
I hold on to the bars of the dip bar with my hands and just dangle, so I'm almost horizontal, and then I do what's, I don't know, maybe 80% of as hard as a pull-up that way. It's like basically
Okay.
doing a row using your body weight.
Yeah.
So all I do is just body weight stuff, and given how much I weigh, it's actually a pretty good workout.
Mhm. Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so Phoenix Igniter has gotten some more traction.
Awesome.
I did give it away for free to most of the people that would have been interested, which were my Alchemist Camp paying subscribers, but I've got 11 sales on it now, and more than 100 people signed up to hear about updates that are asking me about it, emailing. And I think once I've just about gotten all the features that I've kind of drawn as a line that'll define it's out of alpha and into beta.
Hmm.
Once I've just about got all those done, I'll send a couple emails, and I bet a lot of people will jump in to get in before the price doubles.
You're making some great progress on that. So 11 sales. What's that? What's that total then?
660. And
Fantastic.
got a kind of weird thing that happened as well.
Yeah.
There's this site that I've never heard of that retweeted or that tweeted Phoenix Igniter, which has almost no followers, like the
Yeah.
Twitter account just for the new product.
Hmm.
And it was like one of the fastest growing startups this week. I was like, what the heck is this? And I clicked through, and it says so basically the site it just hooks into Indie Hackers API. So it's because I listed this as a product and connected my revenue via Stripe. It just happened that the week cutoff for my first customer, or the week cutoff, was right after my first customer bought. So it said, had my MRR going from $60 a month to 660,
Oh, wow.
even though
That's
it's
cool.
one-off sales and not
So that's
MRR. It was
great.
just,
So it's like a 10x
yeah,
growth. So it's like, whoa.
because of the day that I launched it. So I was ranked at number 8, and some of I mean, one of the ones ahead of me was like had made a total of $50, but they
Hmm.
were up 100%, or they were up some larger amount. So
Interesting.
uh, yeah, it was interesting. So there's I don't know how much of an SEO benefit that is, but there's some weird benefit just to being on Indie Hackers and having your revenue reporting hooked up.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Um, do you find that the indie hacker community, have you ever sort of gotten any leads from that community?
Oh, it's pretty bad for me that way. In
Yeah,
fact,
okay.
I think for the most part, I spent too much time on the website. I was like really trying to help people out and answer questions a lot. And for the most part, I think most of the people there
Hmm.
are trying to sell you their own thing. So you
Okay.
can basically ask anything, and the answer is try out my product.
See
Um,
if it works for you. Yeah.
and it's because a lot of people are like, they just see the site as a growth channel,
Yeah.
and there are some genuine just newbies looking for help, but Elixir is really niche. Like I think if I were teaching like HTML and CSS or something, indie
That's the
hackers
problem.
would be
Yeah.
really useful. But
Yeah.
or if I were just doing anything that wasn't such a small niche. So Hacker News is a lot better actually. Like
Yeah.
I commented on a random Rust tutorial that I thought was well made. It was like it was like this learn Rust by making a markdown converter.
Yeah.
It's like this simple command line thing, and it teaches you a whole bunch of stuff through building a project, and it was very it was very different than most Rust tutorials I've seen.
Hmm.
Instead of focusing on like the kind of difficult things about the language, like having 6 types of pointers and the different, just all the borrowing rules and stuff. This was just like, hey, let's make this thing and build up your confidence, and then make more and then get more confident. And
What is Rust's reason for existence?
it's basically safety. So it's like it gives you all the control of C or C++. But even without a memory manager, you can be sure that your app is memory safe because it's got a concept called borrowing. So if you have if you have a variable which owns like some bit of memory, you can have any number of immutable references. So I could have 10 different variables that are actually all just constants pointing to some value, or you can have one mutable reference and that's it. And then if you want to have multiple mutable references, you have to keep track of which one is responsible for that memory. And there's a concept called borrowing and lifetimes. It's not
But
a
like,
super
why, for
friendly
example,
language,
is
but
that better than PHP or Ruby on Rails or Ruby?
oh well, you can't do that at all. So like Ruby and PHP they both have garbage collection. They both manage the memory for you.
That sounds like a good thing.
It
How is that?
depends.
I don't get why
Because
that's a good thing.
you, so it's like, why do people ever use C++? Like, why isn't Mac OS written in Ruby? Why
Right.
isn't Mozilla, why isn't the Firefox browser written in Ruby? Well, it's because they needed more performance. They were doing everything in C++, and as you talked about on your previous or really old show on texting,
Hmm.
you were saying you are not smart enough to do concurrency in C++, and it's gotten way better over the years, but it's really really easy to make some mistake when you're managing your own memory.
Got it. So it's that
You've
kind
got
of app.
something
It's those.
concurrent.
It's like a sort of highly threaded, really fast, doing a lot of stuff type of app that you want that
Yeah,
stuff for.
you can basically get guarantees of safety, and it's been a big deal for Firefox because before they were kind of afraid to write any code that was multi-threaded, but with Rust they can just do it fearlessly because the compiler is guaranteeing that they don't have any memory leaks, they don't have any arrays going out of bounds or anything like that.
So wait, Firefox is written in Rust?
Huge part of it is more and more of it is like the
Huh.
first they did the CSS rendering, and they've been gradually making more and more parts of it written in Rust.
So
And
Rust is then transpiled to another language, or
no, no,
it's compiled straight to bytecode?
yeah, it makes binaries,
Okay.
and it's an especially good fit for Elixir programmers
Huh.
because Elixir is really good at concurrency, and it's really good at fault tolerance and that kind of thing. It's not good at single processor execution speed. Like there's a bunch of number crunching stuff you would do on the JVM, but you would never do on the Erlang virtual machine.
Hmm.
And so what they do is they write something called a NIF, a natively invoked function, in C traditionally. The thing about it though is like the reason to use Erlang or Elixir is that this thing is rock solid, stable, even more stable than Java. Your app dies, it'll have a supervisor that starts it up again. But if you write a NIF, like natively invoked function, in C, and you screw up, and
Yeah.
you get some kind of crash, it can take down the entire Erlang virtual machine. And so you just lose the one thing that you picked the language for. But you could do that same thing in Rust and have safety guarantees. And that's why Discord uses Rust for certain things they need optimized, even though the rest of their servers in Elixir.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it's
Thanks for
it's
the
cool. Rust is
update.
also growing fast.
Hmm.
It's
Interesting.
it's a neat language. It's very modern. The tooling is really good, really easy to work with, like on Windows or Mac or Unix.
Yeah. Well, my own for my I mean my real report. I guess it pretty much is what I said. You know, I don't have that much. My blood sugar was terrible. I did really bad.
Oh, no.
I guess I had a couple of bottles of wine, so drinking was so I'm really not going to drink for the next month. Um, so yeah, for sure, my goal is to just like keep that blood sugar down for the next week.
Health. Yeah.
And then with Nugget, I just had to stop because it was just well, first of all, the alcohol. Second of all, not enough sleep. I did really bad sleep for the last week as well, like 4 hours a night. Third of all, I got completely hooked into my kids' games. I got super hooked into this game called Skyblock. So basically, in Skyblock, what you do is you start off with just a few blocks in the sky. It's your island, and you've got some wheat. And
Oh, you mentioned this last time. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I didn't
Okay,
realize how addicted I
further.
was going to get to it. But anyway, I got super addicted, and I basically built giant carrot farms and iron smelters. And so, for example, they have this
Okay.
one this one issue where okay, so the largest chest that you can get to store the iron that you make. Okay, well, first of all, let's just start from scratch. A basic person creating iron in this game has to go through the portal, find some iron mines, mine the iron, and then you get iron ore. Then you bring the iron ore back to your island, and you hover it over your campfire, and it smelts it into an iron bar, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of like a very laborious process. Well, as you play the game, you realize that what you can do is you can get these things called totems that you carry back to your island, and then they drop iron blocks. So then you mine them, you get the iron ore, you put it over the campfire.
It's
But
like an iron tree.
then you can basically buy a building bench tier 3, and you can build conveyor belts. And then if you put a totem next to a conveyor belt, the iron ore just drops straight off it, and now you've got iron ore
Oh my
dropping
gosh.
off. But here's the thing: the final thing is you can get an industrial smelter where you can put an industrial smelter on the conveyor belt. The iron ore goes through it and turns into an iron bar. Now the problem is they disappear after about 15 seconds unless you get them. So you need a chest to store them.
Yeah, collector. Yeah.
Right. So they have a chest, but it only stores 40. So then it's
Played a
like,
game like
okay,
this.
so you can only store 40. So then what I did was the final thing, and this is, I think I'm done with it now. I built like a 10 block high thing with the iron ores and the chest. And basically what it does is it fires it down. And then I put 11 chests below, and I made it so that the iron ore bounces randomly around and lands on a different conveyor belt of each of these
Oh,
different
okay.
chests. So it stores 440 iron ore.
So there was a game I played in 2015 called Factorio, where like what you're describing was a core mechanic. It's like you've got
Okay.
things mining things and putting them on conveyor belts and like all kinds of complex logic. So your conveyor belt is taking a resource input, putting into a machine that makes another output, and I got super into it for a few weeks, and I realized it was too much like work.
Yeah, it's like
It's
it's
like you're
taking up so
programming like
much time. Yeah,
conveyor
yeah.
belts and boxes and
Oh my gosh. What was that called?
Factorio.
Factorio. Yeah, but I guess it's like its own standalone thing, right? Or on Steam or something.
Yeah, yeah. It was so this was like 2015. It was like some independent team in Eastern Europe somewhere, I think, made it, and it's really creative, really interesting, and it was well done, and it wasn't expensive or anything.
Mm.
And I think it's only grown gradually over time, but it's definitely in that like supply chain optimization niche of game.
So another thing that was keeping me addicted to this game was I felt like I could be a winner. Like I had got, because you can see how much everyone's earned, how much cash. So
Yeah.
you grow your crops through the industrial stuff that you build, and then you sell them, and then you make a certain amount of money. So I was in the region of around 250,000, 350,000. There, I was usually whenever I was playing, I was usually the leader. A couple of people might come in now; they had like 1 million or something, and I'm like, yeah, I could probably beat you. I was thinking,
Oh,
okay,
that's
I'll do that.
dangerous.
But then, like, I think it was last night or maybe the night before. No, the day before. I'm playing and I see someone with 79 million, and I'm like, okay, no, no, I'm done. Like, I'm not invested
Well,
to the
you
level
have,
where I have to try and get 79 million. That is going to be
yeah,
ridiculous.
you have jobs and businesses, so it's kind of hard to compete.
Right?
Like that was probably some like 17-year-old.
I'm like, how did you get 79 million? He just said, I made a really big farm. I'm just like,
I
oh,
bet.
holy crap. A big farm? Jeez. Yeah. So anyway, so that's been getting me. And I told you about Naval Warfare, that Roblox
Yeah,
game,
yeah,
right?
you
Yeah.
mentioned that.
Yeah. I love that game too. So I'm just doing a bit more gaming than I expected because of my kid. So
Yeah,
that's a new tangent that's taking up actual hours, but I think that I'm over the addiction of the Skyblocks one. Skyblock one.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like something you can't do every week that much, but it's not entirely negative either, since it's a good bonding activity.
Yeah. So then with TaskFlow, I haven't gotten a look in. I did do a podcast with Jason
Nice.
the day before yesterday, which I have to get edited. And he really liked the look of TaskFlow. I've got to get back into it, but before I do that, I've got to finish the Nugget course. It's just cranking, and I'm stuck because each page of the Nugget course, which is like this 7-page course, I sit down to write it, and I think, okay, this is now the context of this course. It's kind of different to the main academy, and so I kind of have to start from scratch, and then it's just coming up with new concepts and new material and new ways to frame something. Like I found a context through the level up,
Hmm.
metaphor. That just takes ages to think of each new one. So it's
Yeah.
so slow to do 7 lessons. Do you find that? Do you find it difficult to
I
sort of
don't,
create from scratch versus build on stuff you've already thought about?
it depends. I think it's often easier to go from scratch. But the thing is, if you're making every single lesson have some clever metaphor, like that's going to be hard. That's going to be a lot of work. And I
Well,
don't see most courses like that. They'll have
well, it's
like one or two big ones.
it's not about. I'm not specifically saying I have to have a metaphor for every lesson. What I'm thinking is, okay, I really want them to understand this concept.
Hmm.
So what can I say that is going to really help them understand it? Because I find that it just goes over people's heads, and I've tried all sorts of different ways. So I'm really thinking through, okay, market. How do I really get this market concept across? Um, and that's what I mean. Sort of starting from a blank page. It's like, you know, it's just
Yeah, it's a hard one for sure. I think for most people starting out, it's probably better to like pick a bad market and a mediocre thing and just get something out there, and then be like, okay, so what didn't work here, and then kind
oh, for
of
sure.
go back.
I'm firmly convinced now that anyone starting out, the first thing that they should do is just release something very small, very quickly. Because I realized that's what I did. I didn't even think about it, but that's what I did. Like you build something and you put it out there and you start interacting. Like when we started with texting, we started doing some blog. We had like a blog competition.
Oh, I remember
We just
that.
sort of
Yeah,
writing blog posts, see who could get the most views. That was great. Like that was our first sort of getting something out into the market.
it kind of turned into like a Hacker News competition.
Yeah, and then which of course Jason won, but not by a huge margin. I think he won on volume because he had like 3 big posts on Hacker News, and I think I just had like 1.
Was that Double Dollar?
No, oh, I mean, Double Dollar did okay, but the big one that I had that like kind of got 1,000 points was it was like something about indie hacker type stuff. I can't remember the
Okay.
name of it right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you just reminded me that thread where I commented on the Rust tutorial that I thought was good.
Yeah.
Just some random stranger popped because I like complimented the author and the author was like, "Oh, thanks." And then some random stranger jumped in and was like, "Hey, that's Alchemist Camp who's like making all these tutorials on Elixir." And the author was like, "Oh, cool,"
Oh, well,
So
that's cool. Well, that's
it's
right. You'll
it's
get into the
a
community. That's really nice.
well, it would just brought me back to the thing where that's like a good place for my niche.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suspect for you, like for Nugget, they're both probably really good, like Indie Hackers and Hacker News both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So so I guess you had a kind of rough week, busy, a lot of non side project stuff.
Yeah. How
Well,
many listeners we got?
that's hard to say. Like so on the stats that I can get from Pinecast, we're getting about 50 listens per podcast.
Okay.
And I have probably greatly harmed that by being so slow to publish them. Because if anyone looks in their podcast player, they'll see like our most recent episode was like 6 weeks ago or something.
Well, yeah, that's cool. So what was our most recent? It's like 7 is published, something
8.
like that.
No, I published 8 right
Published
after
8?
we finished recording.
And we're on 14 now.
I think
14, yeah.
and I just finishing up 9, like in the editing.
Jason listened to the show.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and he didn't have too much to say about it. I just described it, and I said, we're just a mastermind, and we're accountability partners. And Jason said, "I ain't nobody's accountability partner," whatever that means.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, he seems like he likes to go like deeper into a rabbit hole, like all his like startup-y things, at least that he talked about in your podcast, were like these long-term deep efforts, like App Igniter, for example.
Yeah. Or
like I guess maybe you didn't even talk about the other one that was before the podcast, but so what was I thinking there? Yeah. So the listenership is just like, I think it's injured by me doing that. YouTube is still like gradually growing. That's up to like 12 subs now.
12.
Yeah.
Well, I personally, I think the YouTube one is the one that we should be thinking if we're thinking about anything.
I think YouTube. Yeah. Well, I think what would really make the YouTube one grow is if I just took some extra time at some point, and like probably after it gets a certain amount of growth, I'll be more motivated to do this. But just start mining like clips, like an interesting 3-minute clip, or like make each like mental model into its own video. Not like making new content, but literally just the clip from
that's
the
a good plan.
talk.
Yeah, just mental model ones. Yeah, just like a sub. Would you do that as a sub channel, or would you just do that as like a episode?
Definitely same channel. Definitely same channel.
With
same channel, it would be a playlist.
Okay, I see how it works,
every single one of those videos would be, this was excerpted from episode 7 or episode 8, whatever.
Well, that is a good growth idea.
Yeah. Well, I've seen so many like YouTube podcasts do that, and it works. So speaking of mental models, I have one I would like to share. This is from one of my favorite authors, Annie Duke, who I would very much like to get on my YouTube channel, or maybe you should even have her on TechSing. She used to be a professional gambler, like poker player. And she's like become a consultant and written a few books, and they're all focused around decision making. And the idea that she talks about a lot in her previous book, she just made one that's called like How to Decide, but the idea that she's talked about a lot for a long time is called resulting. And what that is it's when you've got some decision you have to make, and then you have some outcome you want, and then based on the outcome, you decide this was a good decision or this was a bad decision. And it sort of makes sense why people would do that, because you often don't have much information. But you can see by reducing it down to something very concrete like poker, how that could be really bad. Like, let's say you're playing Hold'em and there are 4 cards on the board and you have 2 in your hand. Maybe you have like an ace of hearts and a 3 of hearts. And then of those cards that are showing, 2 of the 4 of them are hearts. So if one more heart comes up on the last card, you have the ace high flush and you know you're going to win the whole hand. So then you can figure out like, oh, okay, so like there are 52 cards minus the 6 we see, that's 46, and 13 hearts minus the 4 I know of, that's 9. So it's about just under a 20% chance that that next card will make you win. So you could say, okay, the pot is 10 times as much money as it costs me to stay in or to bet, then obviously I want to do it because I have, a 1 in 5 chance of making 10 times the money. But if you don't think about this carefully, you might just be like, oh, okay, yeah, so seeing this, I'm going to go for it. And maybe the pot is only twice what it costs you to continue. But you win, like just because, sometimes you get lucky, then you might be like, oh, that was a good decision. Or maybe you make the good decision, you stay in. Well, most of the time you stay in, you're going to lose because you're only going to get that last heart 1 out of every 5 draws. So it's obvious that whether or not it was a good decision for you to stay in has nothing to do with whether if you end up winning. Right? But it's so many situations where it's just a bit murkier. Like say in a company, people will see how something went, and then based on that, say it was either a good decision or a bad decision to have done the experiment or to have, tried something.
So what is the mental model?
She calls it resulting.
But I mean what is
a concept more than
what
a
is
model.
what is the training? Like, what is the takeaway?
The takeaway.
You probably just said it to me and I didn't understand it.
Go ahead. So the takeaway is you don't know if your decision was right or not based on the result of it.
Okay.
Because there's some.
So basically, the wisdom here is don't count your sort of chickens kind of concept. It's like just because you've measured a good result doesn't actually mean it was a good result.
It means you can make a bad decision and get lucky and have a bad result, or you can have a good result even though it's a bad decision, or you can make a good decision and get unlucky and have a bad result, but the bad result doesn't mean it wasn't a good decision. So it means think about, was this a good decision based on the probabilities you had instead of did things work, and therefore whether if it was a good decision based on the result.
Yeah, I mean that's gambling, isn't it?
That is all about gambling. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Cool. Does she have any visuals with it or anything like that?
Well, I just read her books, so I don't know. But she might. I got the Kindle version. So she might have something online. I don't even know if she's on YouTube.
Huh. So is that something that I could plug into TaskFlow? That kind of thing?
Maybe. I think that would be a niche feature.
Okay.
Like you could plug that into like your own decisions of like, should I do a nugget launch, or was this a good idea to do TaskFlow or something? Like just be aware that like, was it really a good decision or did I just get lucky?
So have you used resulting in your life?
Oh yeah. Like once I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this all the time. Like I'm attributing so many things to my choices that were really just kind of like random probability. And it's so easy to do that. It's like, you play a video game and you try one strategy and it works. You're like, oh, that was a good choice, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe the person you played against was just completely unprepared for that one thing. So
you just sort of attribute attribute random factors to your success. This is something that I think, when a lot of times when I speak to a founder and I'm like, man, you really rocked it. Like, how did you do it? Like, a lot of times they'll say, you know what? There was a lot of luck. It's a
Yeah.
lot of luck.
Yeah. Well, I
The
think
right time.
it's useful to know that too, right?
Yeah.
Especially for an investor. I think an investor is that's basically the same kind of deal as a poker player, because they have to make all kinds of choices on incomplete information, and there's a huge amount of luck. But if someone gets lucky and then they're like, aha, this is because I am brilliant, like that's just like the surest sign that they're gonna lose all their money soon.
So I think that's a reason why Paul Graham's strategy of just investing in people rather than ideas is quite a good strategy, and it's proven to be quite good over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you could invest in like 1,000 different Patrick Collisons and 1,000 different universes, and
Yeah.
999 are going to do really well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think
And they've
there's
probably
definitely
just got
something to
really
that.
good at recognizing, pattern matching what those kind of people look like.
Yeah. I think they did that. And they also were giving good advice, early on. And then maybe now the big thing is that they have such a network effect, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like getting into YC is like such a big thing now, and so many companies will give you discounts and increases your valuation so much. Like you could almost like have a kind of bad team, but like just still make it just on that all that tailwind of the YC brand.
Tailwind.
Yes, not tailwind CSS, but that's another great thing.
How long till our blog website goes live?
That
Sorry,
is
our
getting
podcast.
That is getting close. So, other half of my update is I
Yeah.
did get a couple videos out for Alchemist Camp.
Cool.
And now I would like to share my screen. There we go. Can you see it? So this was the Phoenix Igniter thing. So
Cool.
I just got this random tweet, and then boom, I'm at the bottom of this site here.
Nice.
Growth for Alchemist Camp has been nuts since I launched Igniter. Like somehow I've just been getting more traffic and more.
That's great.
Everything. Did one video on it here that got way over. So the gray range is like the average number of views in a certain period. So like an average video would have like 120 to 170 now. This has 637.
Wow.
So I got that published, and I made one other I made one other video as well, which was for the Reactor site. I updated live view again from version 0.8.1 to 0.12.1 because everything was broken, but it's fixed again. So all I need to do is get the comments done, hopefully before any more breaking changes in live view, and then launch it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep. So
yeah, I'd love to see your progress.
I'm pretty happy about it because they just everything went up this past 2 weeks. And I think there's almost a thing of like having a second product out there makes people see your first one really differently. Like I think instead of it being like, oh, here's some guy's thing, it's like, oh, this guy makes things, and here's one of them.
Yeah. Getting a bit more kudos.
Yep.
So what is your what's your goal for next week?
Goal for next week is run at least 3 times.
Oh,
and
nice.
Publish 2 more screencasts for Alchemist Camp, and hopefully get 2 of these Reactor episodes put up, since
and
getting less
the
behind will help us.
Website.
That may or may not get done in those 2 videos.
Okay, awesome.
It's it's a process.
No worries. Cool. Well, my goals are I just got to get the course to review status, but I've got some day job stuff that I've really got to get nailed. So I think I got a little bit behind on the day job stuff because of the boot camp, but I've really got to get that out. So I'm going to try super hard to get to review status by next Wednesday, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it because of the work. And just try and keep. Basically, you know, I'm not going to set a blood sugar goal or anything like that. Just no alcohol and sleep.
Those are both good things.
Those are my two goals. Sleep every night, get a decent amount, 7 hours, and no alcohol for 1 week, and see where we are. We might be in a better mood next week.
All right, sounds good then. Call it a show.
Yeah, if that's all right. If that's all right with you.
Yeah.
All right, man.
I will see you next week.
All right.